this is Troy, and I'm very excited to introduce you to, to Gary Ligori, who I met a while back, and he is also a member with a service that we provide at Agora Advantage, and he introduced me to some other products which are just fantastic things that we can do. You know, we'll just have so many opportunities to be able to help companies save money, and Gary's been great to work with. He's very responsive. He gets right back to me, and so today he is going to be introducing us to a new service. So I guess I'd probably go ahead and introduce Gary. You right there?
Yes, thanks, Troy. Appreciate it.
And I'll let you introduce Dale.
Troy and I have. Can you hear me okay, Troy?
Yeah, you're coming through great.
Good. So Troy and I are kind of part of a group that helps businesses reduce their costs and expenses, and then I'm part of a different group that does some services that are very unique, and one of those services is DocuFrog, which Dale Martin is the CEO of DocuFrog. And what catches my attention with DocuFrog is it's a very unique service where, number one, there's really nobody else that I'm aware of in the industry that is doing what Dale is doing. And number two, a lot of businesses I find are not aware of these savings that can be had. They focus on a lot of different areas of their business where, you know, they can cut expenses, but, you know, copier leases is just typically not one of them. So it's, in some ways, it's unique because it's something new to them, but the plus side is it's found money, and it's a lot of money. It's something that when I first learned about this, I was really surprised, you know, how much they could really save by looking at this. And you know, this service will really make people wake up and really say, wow, you know, I didn't realize that there was so much money that I was overspending with their copiers. So with that in mind, I'll hand it over to Dale, and he'll explain exactly what he does, how it works, and how, you know, everybody who's listening to this can make some extra money from it. So with that, Dale, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Gary, and thanks for introducing us. And I'm thrilled to be with everybody today in providing some just background on the company and how do you go out to market, what to look for, what some of the objections might be, and how to overcome those objections. You know, we'll try to structure this so that it's within 30 to 45 minutes, and hopefully it'll be of high value. So my name is Dale Martin. I'm the founder and CEO of DocuFrog. I founded DocuFrog in 2012, so we've been doing this for 7 or 8 years. And the reason I founded DocuFrog was to tell consumers what the vendors weren't telling them, because the game of selling copiers is one of the trickiest and one of the most unregulated areas within the financial world as far as the leasing of equipment and things like that. So they can hide all kinds of expenses and things within the leases. So DocuFrog was founded by office equipment insiders that worked for Xerox, Ricoh, Canon, Kia Ceramita, HP, and Konica Minolta, just to name a few of the companies. The mission for DocuFrog is to create vendor transparency and to return wasted expenses to clients throughout the world. So far, we've worked all over the United States, Canada, and Mexico, and just recently we were asked to look at some stuff in other countries. So as long as right now we are pretty primarily English-speaking company, so as long as we can speak and do business in English, we can help clients out. So we've developed a proprietary control system that we call DOCS, D-O-C-S, and that's an acronym that's the DocuFrog Optimized Control System. And it enables clients to use business intelligence to leverage their negotiation and their copier leases, understand what's in their leases, and to look at both the printors and the printing, the nouns and the verb associated with the internal print flow. So our trademark statement is turning print flow into cash flow. All right, so we are focused on driving expenses down. We do not sell or service any copy equipment, and that's right in our letter of engagement that we sign with our clients. And really, we're there to eliminate the pain of printing. Okay, printing has a lot of components. There's vendors, contracts, leases, service agreements. There's bundled service rates in what you're going to see called clicks. They're called in the industry, or cost per copy, cost per print type agreements. You'll see managed print service agreements, which are another way of bundling. So there's a lot of complexities within the environment. But for you, we've created a very easy, and just the way we want to market is a very easy way for business advisors to engage with their clients and let us do all the heavy lifting. We try to keep the watchmaking out of the equation and keep it very simple for the customer. But just be aware there's a lot of trapdoors and there's a lot of things the clients don't know about and things that we can help clients along with. So the first thing I want to talk about is the results. We've returned millions of dollars to clients throughout the United States and a little bit in Canada and Mexico. One of the things about this business is it's extremely scalable. Whether you have a church on the corner with a single copier on lease to a large national professional service organization with thousands of users and hundreds of offices throughout the United States, we can help. All right. So the entry point is one single copier on one lease, and we've saved over $20,000 in that situation for a client from one copier on one lease. So there's good money in one lease, and then there's hundreds of thousands of dollars when you get into the larger organizations. The average expense waste that we find is about 57%. So we return that to the clients after we're done with our engagements. We don't bill for anything until the savings is created, and we work in a shared savings model. So the next leasing cycle after we get through whatever the current situation is, the client will pay us back, and then after that they're free and clear, and all the money flows to them. So we get a percentage of the money that's saved, and the client doesn't have to create a budget for our services. It's all in the word in accounting called accretive, which means it's all additive. As far as the money, there's no budget that has to money they have to expend to get an ROI. They get money back. We get a percentage of the money that comes back. So we have a 98% success rate when we're dealing with clients. The 2% that we find that are doing a good job, we shake their hands and say, keep on doing what you're doing. We might throw a pointer or two in there, but if there's not an opportunity for us to save money, we don't want to waste our time, and we certainly don't want to waste our clients' time. And then when we're done with an engagement, not only do we renegotiate the cost of the nouns, but we can also affect the verb. And the verb being the printing, there's 20% less printing on average once we get done with an engagement. And that's generally in companies that are a little larger, where they have 50 to 100 or more employees, because there's a few more tools that we can employ when we get to those larger middle market clients. So let's talk a little bit about how we go about going to market. It's going to be a lot of information that I'm going to really bring it home with our 3-step sales process at the end. Here on the screen, you're going to see this is a screenshot from our website at docuprog.com. When you have a client, you want to come back to the Agora website and enter through the Forms tab, but we'll get into that in a minute. But if you need any additional information, or your clients are saying, well, who's DocuFrog? We have a website that, when it comes to what we do, this screen pops up. So we find money, we renegotiate contracts, we have a turnkey system where we do 95% of the work, and the client just has to do a little bit to give us the data for us to work with. In regulated environments, we also look at compliance, HIPAA, personal information. There's 22% of HIPAA violations, if you're familiar with that term, in the healthcare space, privacy of medical records. 22% of the breaches involve paper, and we have the ability to put an audit trail in with the paper so that we can mitigate that risk. And we save money on all the expenses associated with the printing process. And there's really no risk, because if we don't find money, the client doesn't pay us anything. So let's just go through the process a bit, and then we'll get back to how easy it is on your end. So just a quick overview again. We eliminate the pain of printing through transparent vendor control and profit recovery. We reduce the risk of paper information breaches and fines associated with those breaches. Our target markets are really anyone that leases one or more copiers, but we really want to put a focus on kind of the mid-market to larger market. We've had a lot of success in healthcare, nonprofits, and education. Those are three vertical markets that we've had exceptional success, and there's a lot of waste there where we can both help the client and also make some pretty good money on our share of that savings. Also, we want to target clients that have 100+ employees. Now, the ones that have one copier on lease are not going to have 100 employees. So, again, we scaled down, but the target is really that 100+, because that's where the real money is for the folks out there that are really serious. But we want to help everybody that leases. So don't feel that there's anything too small as long as they lease the copiers. If they do, we'll take a look at it, and if it's too small, we'll let you know. So the decision makers here, it's very, very important that you engage a CEO, a CFO, or an owner in a company. We've got to be talking to the folks that are signing on the bottom line and that are vested in the profitability of the company. All right. There's influencers that can help you get there, anywhere from office managers to the CIO, the COO, Chief Information Officer, the Chief Operating Officer, or a general manager. In larger companies, some of these people might be the decision maker, but in that mid-market space, usually it's going to be the CFO or the owner. All right. So we really need to get there, and we need to have somebody that is going to get us there if you don't have that relationship. So what are the pain points for the customer? Number one, they're in long and expensive leases, and there's no transparency in those leases. The clients lease the copiers because they're really expensive, and they usually lease them for 3 to 5 year terms. And then in addition to that, they bundle service in there where the dealers prepay themselves. They have tricky ways of making it sound like it's a really good deal. They call it included volume. But really what it is just another way to have the client commit to things that limits their flexibility, and it hides the profits and the rep commissions associated with the sale of that equipment. And, second pain point is the client has no ability to validate the pricing, nor do they really know actually what their needs are. So unlike when you go to buy a home, you can go and look and see comparable pricing and know what you should be paying for that home. Or if you're selling a home, same thing, right? So on the buy side, the clients have no way of comparing these contracts from one to the other. They can throw it out to RFP and get competitive bids, but these dealers and copier reps are really good at not leaving money on the table. So if the client is going to, so if the client's told they need a 50-page multifunctional printer, blah, 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 that slices and dices and faxes and does all these different things, they don't really know necessarily whether they do or don't need that. And they're going to go bid that, and then anybody that's bidding for it's not going to be telling the client, well, you really don't need that 50 page per minute, blah, blah, blah. Maybe you just need this or that. So we go in there and do with our analytical system that we built. We do comparative analysis. We know what the landed cost of all this equipment is when it hits the loading docks at different ports of entry in the country. Most of it's coming from overseas. And then we know exactly what the profit level is. In addition, we're able to do comparative analysis and capacity analysis and form factor analysis that allows us to make sure that the workflow that the client is trying to perform on these machines is exactly tailored to the machines are tailored to that workflow, not the other way around. So they get exactly what they need on their terms. So another pain point is the time processing paper and managing the printing. A question for your client is, why do you still have so much paper? We can tell them that answer, what their paper is being printed to do, and we can then help them with process automation to get rid of paper. Now again, the people selling the copiers aren't motivated to help the client reduce the paper, and the software companies that may have automated solutions don't really understand what the paper the client is using is, what processes they're using. So those software solutions generally will fail because the client, the vendors are just really selling that to the client, and they don't understand the nuances associated with that client. And the vendors selling the copiers don't want to really tell them how to get the paper down, because that's going to take money out of their pocket. So there's really no place for the client to turn. So that's why we created DocuFraud, to be that source. All right. And then managing the printing, they got leases and vendors and users and downtime and waste and all these resources. And the client's got a mission. They're a nonprofit. They're supposed to be, curing cancer, or they're a healthcare organization and they're supposed to be treating clients, or they're a law firm that's supposed to be practicing law. And they don't have the expertise at the time to manage this printing, so generally it's not managed really well. And then we talked about the breaches involving paper. There's a lot of fines associated with breaches of information, personal information, health information from the HIPAA environment. So the clients generally have a pretty good idea how to back up and put firewalls up and keep people from getting their electronic data, but they have generally no plan in place for their paper. We help them, with that. So what are our differentiations? The first one is really we have goal alignment. Okay, we have no selling agenda because we don't sell or service equipment. We're strictly there to provide consulting for the client, and we get paid off of that shared savings. So it's a very transparent model. The client always gets the biggest share of the savings. All of our analysts, all our project managers, all our business advisors get paid out of the other piece of that shared savings. It's a very fair, transparent model, which is completely, really the mirror opposite of the way most things are sold, where people really are playing a game trying to drive the price down, but they really don't have any idea what the vendor's getting paid, and it's just really a tricky game that takes a long time, and it never gets to the bottom line. So the vendors come in and provide free consulting, and I put that in quotes, but that comes at a big cost to the client, because the client's either buying too much or they're paying too much, or a combination of both those things within the tricks. So again, we're only paid for the found money. So we're only paid for results. So if we don't find any money, we don't get paid. There's no sales or service, and we don't take any dealer spiffs. I've had dealers, that want to get my business and be introduced to our clients, and we don't take anything from them. We don't take any free sporting tickets or any money from the actual transaction. And then the reps are paid more when in the other model, reps are paid more when the spending is higher. In our model, we get paid more when we find more money. So we're aligned with what the client's trying to do. So another differentiation is that we're not just stick our finger up in the air and see which way the wind's blowing company. We don't do dumb things cheaper. We don't just put things out to bid. We've developed advanced analytics and clear data reporting that allows us to, really show the client exactly what they are doing from a print perspective, what their print behavior looks like, and and when I say print behavior, I'm looking at all documents in motion. So the printing, the output, the scanning that's coming into the system, but all that paper to digital, digital to paper behavior that the client has. What do they need and how much should they pay? I can guarantee you that none of your clients know that. So we analyze the leases, the different agreements, the service agreements, the maintenance agreements, the other contracts, service level agreements associated with that client. Printers and copiers, how are they configured? What are they doing? What can they do? Then we compare that with the usage, the workflow, and the behavior. And then we come up with capacity and functional requirements based off of data analysis, not based off of our opinion. And then we baseline and benchmark that to the best pricing available. So another differentiation is we're a turnkey service. Okay, so we just go to work and really come back with a pile of money and say, here you go, client. There's a lot of steps in between that. But we do 98% of the work. The client just needs to spend an average of 2 hours with us to review reporting and to get us a few documents to get started. And they get paid back thousands of dollars on every hour they spend with us. So we provide the analysis, the project management, and the administration to empower the client decisions. Okay, so we're the navigator, and the client doesn't have to worry about losing control. We don't do anything without they're the ones that are going to make the decisions. We're just going to inform them of what we see. If they want to, you're going to find that in a minute, we'll talk about it again, but if they want to stay with their current vendor, we help them renegotiate. If they want to find a new vendor, we have a global preferred supplier network that we can draw upon to provide a vendor that will come in and do things on their terms. But either way, we are there to do all the work. So the customer benefits is time. We provide the resources and tools. That's an objection we'll go over in a minute. Found money, okay, that's expense waste, okay, that's what we do, is find that money. We look at the risk, and the customer's risk goes down by creating an audit trail for all paper in the larger accounts. They don't have to change their dealer of equipment, type. We help them control the vendors and the users. And we create a transparent and simplified environment. All right. So when you go to the Agora site, you're going to find a document that's called a battle card that's popped up here a couple of times. And this is really what I'm presenting from here. And at the bottom of the first page, you're going to see terminology that's going to help you be a little bit more in tune with some of the acronyms and things you'll find. I strongly suggest that you don't try to go in and pitch this service. This is not a pitch type of engagement. It's really a consultative engagement. But you will get thrown some different terms, and it's good to just be a little bit familiar with what you're doing. We'll do the heavy lifting, but those are provided for you so you have a little bit of an understanding of what's going on. So how do you get the conversation started? First thing you should ask the client is, when's the last time they had an independent audit of their office equipment leasing? I try not to mention the term copier or printer or printing so much. I try to stay into the mechanics or where the biggest, when you talk to an executive, if you start mentioning the word copier and printer, you're going to be down at the office manager level really quickly. But when you talk about auditing and you talk about expenses and you talk about, when's the last time you've had someone look at your vendors, then you stay cemented at the top of the organization. So the answer to that question is generally going to be, we haven't, or we didn't know we could, never. And then, do you have a way to ensure vendor transparency in comparing pricing to landed equipment costs? So these answers are all going to be no, until we get down to, are they really looking at managing their expenses? Some clients are growing so fast that expense management is not a priority, and we have walked away from some businesses for that reason. All right. So there's some information on where your money will come from. So once we get into the client and we get done with a project, there'll be lump sum payments on the cost reduction. And then on larger clients, 100 or more users, but maybe we can scale down sometimes to, well, we can scale down sometimes to 50 or so. But 100 is really the sweet spot where there's a reoccurring revenue model from a software as a service that we can employ. But again, we're not selling anything. This is a software as a service that gets backed up by a found money guarantee, where we'll, for any dollar they put in, we're going to guarantee they're getting at least $2 back. And it doesn't get introduced on the front end. It happens as a part of the elaboration in the project. So at no time should be in there pitching software. So here's the great part about the program. It's the sales process. Again, I've given you a lot of background information. Now I'm reeling all that back in, and I'm going to show you the 3-step onboarding process. The first thing before the process starts is you got to gain interest. You got to get a client. The 2 metrics that you got to get memorized is 57% savings and the 98% success rate. So once you introduce that to the client, you've asked a couple of the discovery questions. The big thing here is to just, what I like to do is pivot with the client and really not pitch at all. So once we gain the interest, I pivot and say, what I want to do is I want to make sure you're not part of the 2% we can't help, right? That we cannot help. So I want them to now start trying to sell to us, saying, well, what do you mean you can't help me? And then when the client says, well, now what do I got to do? The first thing you need to do is obtain 1 or more leases from the client for us to do our audit. Okay, from those leases, when you get the leases, you're going to go back to the Agora site, and you're going to hit forms. You're going to fill out the information in the boxes, and then you're going to attach that lease, and then you're going to hit send or submit at the bottom. All right. So once you hit submit, that's going to go to our team. We're going to then produce a report card that will be sent back to you. And then you're going to set up a 12-minute meeting with your client. Okay, a requirement for that meeting is to have a decision maker, owner, CFO, C-level person that can sign on the bottom line at that meeting. Okay, so that meeting we're going to have 3 4-minute segments. The first 4 minutes we're going to talk about their lease and review the report. The next 4 minutes we're going to talk about our letter of engagement. All right, which is really a very simple document. It doesn't have a lot of legalese in it. 1 page that has 3 parts to it. And I'll give you the second 4-minute piece in about a minute here. So the first part is the basic agreement that we're going to work on a shared savings model. That we're not going to bill the client for anything any money that we don't find. And that when we do, we're going to do 98% of the work, and then we're going to split the savings equally. Okay, that's important that you get that into your vernacular, in that you don't want to say 50%. You want to say we're going to do 98%, 95% of the work, 98% of the work, and we're going to split the savings equally. There's going to be a little variation in how much work they're going to do. But the gist of it is we're going to do the heavy lifting, and they're not going to have to do a lot, and then we're going to split the savings equally. The third 4-minute segment is for the client to ask us questions. And in the last 2 months, I got 1 request for providing references, and I was really surprised. And then I went back and thought, I've never been asked for references. And one of the reasons why there's never references asked for is that when we have that review of the lease in the first segment of this meeting, the client knows that we know what we're talking about. All right. So when we have that meeting, we are very credible, and the client understands that we know what we're doing, and then our terms are so fair that we don't have requests for that very often. And again, that was the first time that happened. So we gave them some reviews. We've got hundreds of really satisfied clients, and that wasn't a problem. But it's just really just dawned on me that we never really had any requests for that. So once the meeting's over, we'll send the letter of engagement, which is an e-sign document that gets sent through Adobe signature, Adobe sign, and it goes to the client, and then they review it, and then about 80% of the time, once we go through that 12-minute meeting, we'll sign the business up. All right? So it's simple. 1, 2, 3. Get the lease, get the meeting, get the engagement. All right? So leave the heavy lifting and the stuff I'm telling you here on the back side. I just wanted to make sure you understand that there are big problems out there. The clients have a problem. A lot of times they don't know they have the problem. And it's good for you to understand that we are fishing in very deep and rich waters. All right? But beyond that, don't spend a lot of time telling them how to make the watch, because when they need to know what the time is, we want to stick to keeping it simple. All right? So some objections you're going to find is and this one's across the board on almost everything you're going to ever run into. We don't have time. All right? That is usually, that's a smokescreen objection. And, number one, the client doesn't have to spend much time. We're going to do all the work for them, with the exception of a couple hours. The average return on time is over $10,000 an hour. Again, that scales as an average. Obviously, if they have one copier printer that doesn't even add up to $10,000, I'm not going to say get $10,000 an hour. But on average, we're well over $10,000. All right? When you get into 5 and 6 machines on lease, we save 6 figures for the client, and when they're only engaging with us for a couple hours, they're getting a huge return on their time. We turn the client data into actionable business intelligence. So they already have the data, as far as what they're doing, how they're using equipment, and they're not using that. So we use that data to save time to make better decisions. We provide clear and simple reporting so the client doesn't have to wade through a bunch of stuff that doesn't matter to them. We can dive as deep as they want to go. But usually they'll dive deep with us once, see that we know what we're doing, and then they'll say, all right, what do I got to do? And we go back to the simple reports. And again, we provide the resources. We do the work. So we give them time. So that's not an objection that should be a hard one to overcome. This one's a big one. We just signed a 5-year lease, or whatever the time frame is. We can usually find savings regardless of the lease expiration in 45 to 60 days. It's very important to understand that we don't make the lease disappear. All right, I wish we could, but we can't. So we got to identify the constrained costs of the lease. Sometimes we're going to have to wait 3-4 years to be able to renegotiate that, but we should be able to find savings in 45 to 60 days. Now, in smaller accounts, it's a lot more difficult to find that savings. But the key here is they don't have to pay for us until we find savings. And if they don't sign up with our program now, they're not going to know how much they paid. They're not going to know how much profit the dealer made from them. So by understanding that now, they understand that they need us to help them renegotiate as that time comes in the future. So this is not a get-rich-quick scheme. You might be the lucky one that finds something that we can work on immediately and really get everything dispositioned within 3-4 months and then get paid 6 figures, but that's not the norm. You really need to get multiple clients with multiple leases to make this program really work for you. If you're just dabbling and you want to, have your friend's lease run through the system, you'll get paid a few $1,000s for that. But if you really are deliberate about this, there's, every business on every corner has got a lease, and the more you get in the system, the more the system's going to work for you. The program's going to work for you. The next objection is we like our vendor. That's simple. They don't have to change their vendor. End of objection. Another one that's a little trickier is the printing is not that big of an expense. You don't really want to tell the customer they don't know what they're talking about, but the waste is hidden in a lot of small and tricky places. You've got monthly payments. You've got bundled click charges. You've got different vendors involved. Usually there's a bank involved that has the lease, and then there's the copier dealer that's billing for the service. When you look at the little printers and things that we are going to look at, as well as the big, the bears and the mosquitoes, the little printers running around, bears are the big, the big devices that they're leasing. We're going to look at those too. And, they're paying Office Depot and Staples a lot of money for the supplies, and then they have service contracts on those. So there's, in a normal environment, there's 5 or 6 different vendors and expense lines. And the client does rarely, very, very rarely, do they have all that rolling up so that they know exactly where that is. So with that, I'm going to close on a call to action for you guys. Go out and look at your database. Start with the clients that you have the best relationships with, any owners that you know, any CFOs that you know, any organizations that you have, clients that you've got good relationships with, and offer to do a free lease analysis, the lease audit form, and submit that through the website, and let's get started. We're saving tens of thousands of dollars each week for clients throughout the United States, and I'd love to hear from you and to open up some new clients in places that we may not be working. So with that, good luck, and please submit any questions that you may have through the site, and we'll get back to you as soon as we possibly can. We're going to try to turn these around within 24, 48 hours. And thank you very much for attending this webinar.
Thank you. And Gary, so basically, Gary's your point of contact. If you have any questions, you can reach him right here at 609-217-1333, and then or email him at GaryAtlanticCostReduction.com, and then he can get the ball rolling, get things over to Dr. Fry if you have any questions. So, Gary, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I think just to reiterate what Dale said, trying to keep it simple when you do engage with a CFO, and just ask that question that Dale mentioned. Have you had your office equipment audited or vetted, reviewed, whatever word you want to use, whatever you feel comfortable with? Just ask that question, and then that'll kind of lead into the rest of your explanation of, we're not sure whether we can save you money. Usually we can. A very high percentage of the time we can. But if you just let us take a look at your lease agreement and your maintenance agreement, then we can just get back to you and review it and leave it pretty simple without getting into a lot of detail. So I think that's the most important thing. And then the other thing I'll mention, just to recap what Dale said, is the 100-person business is ideal. That's a sweet spot. But this is one of those services where they can be, if you have a prospect that has as little as one copier or 5, 10, whatever it may be, there's still enough savings there to make it worthwhile to have that discussion. But typically, bigger is better. There's more money to be made there, but it's not going to be excluded if it's a smaller client.
Yeah, what I like about this is, in business, there's so many different areas and things that business owners are faced with, and this is just one of those areas that they may not realize that they can save money on that, and it's an opportunity for you also to get some information because there's a lot of money being spent here on copy machines and printers, and I've been involved with companies that spend tons of money on this, and paper and maintenance, and it's a huge industry. So I'm really glad to bring this into Agora. Troy, why don't you go ahead and do you have anything to add to that, Troy, and we'll end the call?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. I just want to remind everybody, one, I know we in particular have a healthcare service that some of us are out there working. I know I was, and I think there were some others. The healthcare industry is a perfect match for this. Because they are quite commonly using leased printers, and they also have a concern regarding HIPAA and all of that. So they have a kind of a double concern regarding this, and so they're going to be especially happy with it. Another thing I wanted to point out is that, consider also when you're working when you're working with any business, and this is one of the services that we have. We have others as well that can save companies money. That if you're able to save money for a business, and maybe perhaps your ultimate goal was to provide marketing material or websites or whatever it is, and sometimes there's a substantial amount of money that they need to put down. If you can find a way to offset the cost, or sometimes more than cover the cost, that's a great way to start your relationship, because or continue a relationship, because you've done what really no other salesperson is likely to ever do, which is to actually go and pay for the things that they were going to need to buy. So that's kind of what I wanted to add to the mix. And I really do appreciate, I can tell you all that Gary is, like I said at the beginning, very receptive, very easy to reach. Normally he returns phone calls within an hour. And keep in mind, he's on the East Coast. And so thank you, everybody, for being here.